questions? We've not. So the question is there an equivalent FIT program coming into Alberta?
No, at this time, none of the processes by which the renewables will be brought online have actually been fully explained by the government. So they've only brought out really high-level stuff. There's a definite weight in the recommendation to the minister along the lines of a lot of utility scale stuff.
Are you guys involved with that process?
No, we're not actually involved in the process. All Albertans were welcome to submit recommendations to the panel, but the panel made their own recommendations.
Why wouldn't you guys collectively just get together and then, try to...
So the question is, I'm sorry, the question is why?
Why wouldn't you form a committee to get that expedited?
Why wouldn't you form a committee to expedite it?
The reason we didn't form a committee is, well, some of us did form, there's a few associations that people do belong to that have been lobbying for certain positions. The board itself that was appointed by the Alberta government was trying to take as many inputs as possible and at the same time trying to balance the realities of the province. I'd have to give this to Dr. Leach to defend. Unfortunately, I've read the report and I have a feel as to where it's probably going to go. But I think we'll see what the Alberta government does. Everybody was invited to give recommendations, but there was no particular...
You guys didn't do that though?
So I want to move on.
Yeah, I submitted my own opinion, and I worked with others to submit other opinions, and I hope everybody in this room submitted opinions, but it was a grassroots response.
So quickly, Jim or one of the other panelists, explain what a FIT program is, please.
A feed-in tariff program is when you're guaranteed, it's like a power purchase agreement from the province, essentially, or from the utilities. Essentially what happens is, if you put a certain type of technology onto your property and it generates electricity, in a feed-in tariff, you are guaranteed a certain price when you feed electricity into the grid. And so in Ontario, they had some feed-in tariffs that had very, very high valuations because the equipment was very expensive. Nobody expected the equipment to drop in price so quickly, and they actually got a little bit caught with their pants down on that one. And so they've actually been criticized for overpaying for electricity in Ontario. Other places like California, which is where Rob is from, very smart folk in California, they actually did the downturn was not based on a time manner, but by how much had been installed. And so they didn't get caught quite as badly with overpaying for electricity. I don't think Alberta's going to do a feed-in tariff, and I think the danger of us overpaying for electricity, like Ontario has in the past, is going to be avoided by the way the NDP is moving forward.
I think BC has a good system now.
Yes. Yes.
British Columbia.
Yes, British Columbia. I don't believe they have a feed-in tariff.
Well, I looked at one webinar yesterday, one company, and they show that how it's calculated, like, of course, the basic sort of delivery price is taken out, and then there is a value to pay back for any extra generated.
Right. Okay, good.
I think there is something.
So, any other questions in the back? Yeah, right here.
Could you talk a little bit about the permitting process? Have you gone through it before, like is it for a homeowner or something, or is it for a business? What that would be like?
Can you talk about the permitting process? What's involved? I'm an expert.
Because she loves it so much.
It depends on jurisdiction. Are you asking about Edmonton?
It's sure Edmonton or Calgary.
Well, I know about Edmonton. They haven't really sorted it out yet. I think that kind of summarizes it. We've been back and forth with them a lot on what they require. We get different answers from different people. So, yeah. What's involved though mainly is you need electrical permit and you need to prove that you don't need a development and building permit. And by proving that you don't need a development and building permit, you have to apply for a development and building permit. So that's kind of just the beginning of it. It's not that bad, it's not undoable or anything, but it can be a little bit inconsistent, we'll say.
Question right here.
Do you recommend that people who have technological degrees, like engineering degrees, go back to school and take some sort of diploma program like the ones offered at NAIT or Lakeland in order to gain access into the industry?
Yes.
Repeat the question that she asked, please.
Would it be, I guess, prudent or beneficial for people who have degrees like electrical or engineering degrees, you said, to go back and take a diploma program similar to what's being offered at NAIT or Lakeland? I can speak for Lakeland. We certainly get interest from people that are in that area of expertise wanting to enhance their skills.
I think that there's a possibility that it could be helpful. In most cases, both of ours, it may be that you might get some advanced credit if you have the right skill sets in some of the basic courses. When you get into the later courses, they leave the beat and track pretty quickly, and I think there's inherent value in jumping into a program. Many of the people in this room did figure out the solar industry themselves, so it's not impossible, and with a very strong technical background, it's doable. I think if you look at the balance, however, that you could jump ahead a little bit quicker, standing on the shoulders of giants, as it were, rather than creating it from scratch.
Question here?
What kind of salaries might somebody expect, say, 5 years out of your program or right out of your program?
What kind of salaries can one expect, say 5 years out of the NAIT program?
You don't have to give them.
Yeah, what's your salary, Trevor?
I see the man that employs me is looking at me from up there.
You'll have to sign an NDA, all of you.
Yeah.
Isn't this a ski season?
It's definitely, it grows with your knowledge. Starting out, you would be making, it would depend on where you're coming from and what you sort of brought right from the very beginning. If you had like an engineering background, that would probably be factored in. But kind of coming from where I came from, I took the courses at NAIT. I had a good general background of what the technologies were and how they functioned, and some idea of how to apply them. I sort of came in about equivalent to like a beginning apprentice, like first to second year trades apprentice for electrical would be sort of around there. That was sort of the level of knowledge that I brought in the beginning, and I started there, and it's since grown from there with the value that I was able to add to the company. Definitely, I think it's very fair, and it is very, because I work in a smaller division of our company, it's very closely tied to the success that we're having within our division. So when we have more success, there's a lot more room for compensation for me because I'm directly helping the company and growing our revenues. I think it does depend on what you are bringing right off the bat, because those two programs, like you could have a lot of different people coming out of there. You could have somebody graduate with the NAIT diploma and an electrical engineering degree, or you could have somebody with just a high school education and that degree, and you would compensate those people differently because they can do different things for you. But based on my experience, it was sort of, I came in like as a lower level trades worker for that because that was the skill set that I brought.
We have official numbers on our NAIT website for every program. I think what you said is very applicable. There's such a small sample size and so much variance that I wouldn't make any recommendations based on that number.
Yeah, I would agree totally. We actually don't have any graduates yet from our second year diploma, so the only graduates we have is 1 year certificate. You know, if we take somebody like the person I mentioned earlier was working as a sales manager, I don't know exactly what his salary is, but it's up similar to what, you know, a sales manager would be in other professions, is my understanding, but it really varies. What we've seen so far, the sample sizes are really small. What do you guys pay at Skypark?
I'm good installer.
Yeah, what's an installer get? Question.
Well, basically, most of our installers are apprentices, so we do follow guidelines in terms of the ratio of apprentice's wage towards a journeyman's wage. That being said, I think, like everyone else alluded to, it does kind of depend a little bit on what you bring to the table. If you do have more specific training and other experiences pertinent to the job, then that's certainly going to be worth a little bit more than basic salary, basic wage.
So is it journeyman industrial, commercial, or residential rate that you started?
Is it journeyman commercial, industrial, or residential rates that you start at?
Typically, commercial.
Good. Question, yeah?
What are the class sizes like at your institutions, and what would be the amount of coursework that you have to take to graduate?
So what are the class sizes at these institutions, and what would be the amount of coursework that you need to take? Time commitment?
Okay, at Lakeland for our online courses, we're recommending 10 to 12 hours per week per course. So if you're trying to take it part, one to do it in 2 years, you're going to have to take 2 courses at a time. You need to really think about committing 20, 25 hours a week to it. Because we don't require everybody to come in all at once, the more popular courses are in the 20 to 30 range. And then, because a lot of people are doing it over an extended period of time, we've had as little as 2 or 3 in a couple of our second year courses we've ran. I hate to say that those aren't cost effective, but we try and offer them anyways.
Our program is completely face-to-face. We've capped our numbers of students at 28, which is really the limitation of what the classroom is able to support, but that is the tendency of NAEP to have class sizes 30 or less in most cases. A little different that we don't really offer much in the way of part-time studies or evenings or online. Part of that is because we've got such a hands-on component associated. So, for example, in the first year, there's about 250 hours of hands-on lab work. If you include the work we do with design and drafting as well. When we get into second year, it's more like 400 hours of either hands-on or direct project work. And that's not something we can really effectively do in the context of the online for just the way ours is created or has been designed. When we talk about the number of hours committed to program, a person doing full-time could expect about 25 hours of face-to-face contact, labs or lecture per week. And the standard rule of thumb in a post-secondary is 1 to 2 hours of effort per hour in the classroom. So we're not kidding at all when we say it's 50 to 60 hours a week. There's a lot to cover in two years. And from that perspective, I cannot stress enough how much a person could historically potentially undermine or actually jeopardize their success in the program by trying to hold a part-time job at the same time. I'd far more recommend trying to do 2 jobs in the summer and bank the money rather than trying to do education, which I would argue is harder than work. Trying to get all that learning in plus pull a part-time job at the same time. Whenever we've seen problems and people needing to leave the program, it almost invariably involves trying to hold down 20 hours of work as well a week.
Question here?
That being said, are there scholarships available for your program, or is that an overall energy scholarship offered through the energy school?
Yeah, we've got
Are
a number
there
of
scholarships available for the program, was the question?
There's a number of scholarships. They're listed on our website. That's not exclusive. Those are just the ones that have been identified specifically to our program or are available to our program through NAEP. But there's other scholarships available to people outside of the NAEP prescribed scholarships or described scholarships that people can apply for. We've had a number of students who in our program are Aboriginal who have actually got quite a few scholarships by other avenues besides just.
Question back there?
Just a quick question on the general interaction for the folks that do installations. As far as the industry goes, the nature of decentralized energy is just that you're decentralizing energy in such a way where the central control slot is being removed. With the players in the industry today, the water line providers, permitting agencies, safety officers that you guys are interacting with on a daily basis, would you say over your career, have you seen a general sort of progression towards acceptance and ease of doing business for solar interacting with the conventional industry? Or are you finding there's more barriers and other things that are coming up such as cost barriers, perhaps like distribution costs rising, things like that. Just general feel. Would you guys say it's easier to do business the way you've seen it, or more difficult with solar? Or actually any renewable for that matter, not just solar.
Do you want to summarize that, Rob?
Oh, yeah, Rob's going to read, he's got to read.
What I was hearing is, what you've seen over time, are you seeing more barriers from the institutions that you have to deal with, or less in terms of utilities, agencies, et cetera?
Well, on the larger distribution scales, I don't have a lot of first-hand experience. My colleagues at Skyfire Energy do. I don't think it's been really kind of fisticuff battles in all regards. Sometimes there are a bit of headbanging going on, trying to get progress. I think in terms of installation, the beginning projects like applying for microgeneration applications, permitting and inspections, for the most part it's been moving along fairly well. The city of Edmonton really has hit a bit of a road, I don't know, speed bump, whatever you want to call it. Like Beth's been kind of talking about it a little bit. Their processes for permitting in the past have gone from a little bit onerous, but fairly straightforward, to having a very simple process that had some requirements that didn't seem to make sense considering what you were applying for, to where they're at right now, which is, it's like they took everybody out of their positions and threw in a whole bunch of new people at the city of Edmonton trying to deal with this permitting process. And I think they just really need to kind of sit down and it's not a complicated matter with permitting in the city. You may or may not need a development or building permit. You do need an electrical permit, and that's it. There's not a whole lot to it, but they just kind of... inspectors, we have some really knowledgeable inspectors, electrical inspectors here in Edmonton. A few individuals in particular have attended a lot of training courses that have been put on by Solar Energy Society over the past few years. There are some inspectors. The city's actually really good about sending out inspectors that are familiar with solar PV systems when they're being installed, and that's what they're heading out to inspect. I've seen kind of like tag-alongs where there might be an inspector's jurisdiction, but he hasn't seen any PV systems, so they'll actually send along another guy. So I think they're really good in that regard.
So I think we'll take 2 more questions, starting with you.
Hello. When I first heard about renewable energy, there was a fellow at a camp had taken one of those metal barrels and cut it in half and used it for generating batteries, and he was powering the camp. So I'm not interested in that, just because it was neat, like a car battery, alternator, and drum. But since then I've done all kinds of stuff with it, and 2 people on the panel might be able to answer this question for me. Where can I get that data from the different angles of panels that we need there? Because I know that it is available, but I haven't been able to find it.
So yeah, the multi-layered thing we built that at NATE. Props to Gordon Howell from Howell Mayhew, Rob and CISA for coming up with the idea of wanting to give everybody an understanding of what the impact of snow is on solar, because it was an unknown and it was an impediment to people wanting to invest in it. City of Edmonton funded it. That particular report can be found on the NATE Alternative Energy webpage. There's a section we have on research. There's a picture of it, and right below it is that sort of blue word link that you can click, and you'll get the report there. If you, I think we've got 3 years of data now.
2012.
Yeah, it continues for 3 years. We've got Tim Matthews, who is our technician, and these 2 will attest, is amazing. Every time it snows, that man puts on boots and gets on the roof and clears that thing clear. So every morning it snows. Actually, every morning he goes out to find out if it snowed, because he's that dedicated.
There's a link on the CISA website also to that. So we're going to take one last question in the back. Yeah.
I hear a lot of expanding solar and wind. Can anybody comment on the future of geothermal in Alberta and Canada?
Yeah. Comments on the future of geothermal in Alberta and Canada.
So I would put that into the category, and I think they would too, of energy efficiency. And we know that the province wants to roll out energy efficiency programs. There are, on a very small scale, a house of maybe 2,000 square feet. It's not particularly economical to do geo-exchange right now because of natural gas prices. When you get into larger buildings, and you guys have probably done some now, I would think for quite some time, the economics are more favorable. In terms of where it's going to go, I think we'll see some traction, I hope for traction, when we see the energy efficiency programs rolling out of the province. And I'll hand it over to Trevor.
Right, so like Jim said, geo-exchange is very closely tied to the price of natural gas on how much economical sense it makes. So we see that in a lot of our projects. If you look back at when the big boom of geothermal projects was, it was around 2007, 2008 when gas prices spiked, and then since then things have been a lot quieter. Geo-exchange has a lot of specific applications where it doesn't have as many challenges making economical sense, especially for commercial, where you might have a need for heating and cooling, and then you could use a geo system to serve both those purposes. So in some specific applications, those projects are still going on right now, but in a general, more industry-wide kind of look at things, because gas has been so cheap lately, a lot of those projects have slowed down.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, everyone.